David.
Thanks so much, Mark. President Trump took to Twitter this morning to attack the Mueller probe, saying that he has the right to pardon himself, but doesn't need to. Also that, quote, the appointment of the special counsel is totally unconstitutional. Despite that, we play the game because I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong. We welcome now Republican Congressman Ryan Costello of Pennsylvania. He's joining us from Wilmington, Delaware. Mr. Congressman, thank you so much for coming with us. You are a lawyer. You're a lawyer, but I'm not going to ask you the legal question. I'm going to ask you more the political question. It feels like the president and his team are really going for all or nothing. That is to say, there is no legal process that the president is subject to, and therefore, if you want to do anything, it's got to be impeachment. Is that a smart strategy?
I think the president is having an argument with himself right now. The Mueller probe and those on the Mueller side of this still have not made any comments to the press and are not engaging the president. I kind of wonder if the fact that they're not engaging with the president, that makes the president do even more of this. But your point is well taken. I think the political side of this rallies the base, right? This gets the base all in for the president. I don't think that there's clearly no legal effect by the president's tweets or even what Mr. Giuliani says on behalf of the president at this point.
But when we have the president today question the constitutional basis for the appointment of Mr. Mueller, if the president actually were to act on that, or really try to disband the Mueller investigation, how would the House of Representatives, of which you are a member, react?
Yeah, that would be the wrong move. Let me say this. It was a constitutional appointment, right? That was done that was appropriate. I also do believe that the president has the authority to disband it, but if he were to do that, clearly every Democrat under the sun would go crazy. And I think a lot of members on the Republican side of the aisle would view that as an illegitimate exercise or something that would call into question whether there is even more to this. I mean, the president has denied that he had any involvement. I don't think, candidly, that the Trump campaign was organized enough for him to collude with anyone. So I don't think that it would be the right approach. I would echo what my colleague Trey Gowdy once said. If you haven't done anything wrong, don't act like you've done anything wrong. And when the president makes these tweets, he actually just, I think, creates more of a spectacle by doing so. I don't think it calms the waters. I think it just incites people up even more.
You are backing legislation that would prevent the president from firing Mr. Mueller, the special counsel. Where is that going, and do you expect any new momentum in that drive?
Well, that's a great question. I think by the president saying what he does, it creates more relevance and credibility to why we've signed on to that legislation. I don't think it's going to be presented to the House of Representatives. I don't think we're going to have a vote on it. But if you look at members that have signed on, I think it indicates that the president should not be able to disband a special counsel that has been appointed by the Attorney General. But clearly, the president, by virtue of the fact that we have legislation in order to prevent it, the president does have the legal authority to disband it.
Congressman, we learned over the weekend that President Trump's lawyer sent a letter, that letter published by the New York Times as part of a broader argument in order to not have the president sit down with the special counsel. Do you believe at this point that that interview is still necessary?
I don't think the president will sit down with the special counsel. It's hard for me to know whether it's necessary or not because we don't know the full scope of what the Mueller investigation is at this point. We do know that there was sort of a confidential presentation to the judge as to what the scope now is. We know what the initial scope was, but we don't know what evidence may have been attained and how that may have impacted what the scope is right now. But I don't expect the president will testify, no.
Congressman Costello, I want to turn to another subject, one that particularly affects Pennsylvania, and that is, of course, trade. I mean, we have these new tariffs being imposed. There's a lot of people around the world that seem unhappy with the United States. And specifically with respect to Pennsylvania, we'll put up a chart here that shows the effect of the aluminum and steel tariffs on people in Pennsylvania. You would gain, according to the Trade Partnership, nonpartisan organization in Washington, you'd gain 2,700 jobs in steel and aluminum, but you would lose nearly 20,000 jobs in other sectors. Where do you stand on what the president's doing with tariffs on steel and aluminum?
Well, I don't support his approach. I'm looking at this temporarily, to be totally blunt with you, because if this is, I've always said, if this is part of a longer short-term negotiating tactic that's going to lead us to a better place where China is not getting the better of us on trade deals, that's fine. The problem is there's a lot of short-term harm right now, and we're not seeing any real cogent long-term strategic response as to how we're going to end up better off. What we are seeing is how this is going to hurt a lot of consumers and a lot of producers. The other big industry, I think, in Pennsylvania, I'm not looking at the chart, but on the agricultural side of the realm here too, we're not going to be in a good place with our foreign trading partners, as well as a lot of domestic producers, manufacturers across the economic continuum.
So finally, Congressman, you mentioned temporarily, you've decided not to run for office again, in part because of that redistricting that got done throughout the state of Pennsylvania. As you look forward to November, what really are the prospects for the Republicans when so many people like you on the Republican side of the aisle have decided to step down for various reasons?
Well, it's a challenging political environment, as it would be for any members that are in the president's first term, in that first midterm. It's interesting. We have really good economic numbers, economic indicators. You've reported on them. At the same point in time, in a district like mine, suburban, affluent district, high level of college educational attainment, where the president's numbers amongst Republicans even are not where they are in the rest of the country. So it's going to be a very challenging political environment. I still think that Republicans will hold on to the House by a dozen seats or so, but it's certainly, the House is up for grabs, but we do have a strong message. We just need to make sure that individual members are out there making the argument for their own re-election.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time today. That's Congressman Ryan Costello. He's a Republican of Pennsylvania and a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Great to have you, sir. Still ahead, the First Amendment comes out on top in a narrow